I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Know Her podcast. I am Scott.
And I'm Michael.
And we are here again to champion a star of the big screen that we just really want to have a nice old discussion about. But we're taking things maybe in a slightly different direction for the next handful of episodes. But I'm going to let Michael tell us about that direction.
Yes, I mean, this sounded good on paper, but now that I have to explain it, I feel like it's a bit of a non-thing. But we're going to be going in even deeper into what we are here to do, talking about underappreciated actors, and talking about underappreciated actors who are underappreciated by me and Scott. And this all started because we have a brilliant guest, who we will introduce very shortly, who brought somebody to us who we just felt like, well, wow, like, why have we not focused on this person before? Like, we know nothing about them. There was nothing really about their career that had really jumped out to us on film in a singular sort of way. And yet, then when we sat back and watched the films and thought about this person, it's like, yes, we need to focus more on people we don't appreciate ourselves. So I'm very excited to kick it off with this subject, but also our guest, who is the one and only Eoin Daly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to have inspired an upcoming round of episodes. And I agree. Let us praise and discuss the performers who we don't discuss and praise enough.
Exactly, yeah. It's too easy for us. We'll always, a Diane Wiest, Marcia Gay Harden, Jennifer Coolidge, Jean Smart, like all these sorts of people. Victor Garber, if you're my personal preference of someone I always will champion randomly, who I'm not sure anyone cares to hear me talk about that. But yeah, I think it is exciting to kind of question that more. And who have you brought to us, Eoin?
I have brought the surprisingly American actress to some people for a multitude of reasons. I have brought Nepo child Jennifer Ehle to discuss.
Fabulous, and what a topical choice, so multi-layered. And I'm glad that you said the bit about surprisingly American, because that was almost a route we were going to go down with this kind of miniseries. Like, is there anyone else who's surprisingly not from where we think they are?
Yeah, honestly, I just can't, I could not believe it. When I read it, I was like, no, this can't be real. Now, she did, as we'll go into, spend time in the UK and America. She's growing up. And her mother, as you've hinted to already, is Rosemary Harris, who is a very English actor. Very English actor. That sounds almost like an insult. Anyway, but she's English, so that's true. But yeah, I'm so delighted. Jennifer Ehle's someone who I absolutely would be, like, has a place in my heart because of the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth. She's a wonderful Elizabeth Bennet. And even though now it's a bit twee, I guess, aesthetically and stuff, and the way they adapted it visually at most, I guess, but it's still lovely. Like, watching bits of it in preparation was so nice. It's just like a wholesome celebration of Austen and love and romance and Englishness in a positive way. And yeah, so yeah, to think of her in film, God, honestly, it took me a few minutes, apart from The King's Speech and Zero Dark 30, I was like, I don't know if I know any other movies, but I have seen loads. I just hadn't really clocked or remembered she was in them, which sounds really awful, but that is the truth.
I was just going to say, where did you first come to Jennifer, Eoin? Why have you chosen to bring her to us?
The reason I wanted to discuss Jennifer Ehle has a lot to do with a recent film of hers, and a film that I know you've discussed recently on the podcast because of another brilliant actress, and that film being She Said. And just, it made me realize how infrequent, how small her roles can be in a lot of films that she's in, but I think she said kind of got to the stage where it's like, it doesn't matter how small the role is, she can excel regardless. And I think having seen that performance this past year, I just fell down the rabbit hole of, I'm reminded of just how great she is.
Love that. That's perfect. Because, yes, there has been so much, I guess, more recently for her. She said for sure, I think she's perfect casting in that film, really importantly, because I think that film in particular commands a lot of... You need to have sympathy for these characters, and that should go without anything else. You know, because of what happened to the people that she said depicts, of course you're going to feel sympathy. But there's something about her casting which profoundly brings you in even more. There's something about her eyes and her nature in that film where you really feel for her and really feel for the struggle that she went through, and you can feel it kind of ruminating throughout her sort of being. And I think that's why she's wonderful, and a great way to feel that she needs to be championed more. What was the first sort of film you remember seeing of Jennifer's?
The first, I think the first kind of film where I remembered her came late into my film watching career life. Is probably Zero Dark 30. Like I'd seen films of hers before then, but I think that was the one where I was like, okay, who's this person? Mm-hmm. I guess we can get into what happens to her in that film and what her role is in that film, but she just sort of had an energy that was very exciting to experience, and I was like, okay, people need to cast you more. And then I think that role kind of put me down the rabbit hole of looking into her life and seeing what she'd done and finding out that she'd done pretty so much before.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a wonderful choice. Was that the first place you remember her from, or were you a viewer of Pride and Prejudice, the BBC TV series, from your younger years?
So I'm only a recent I'd say in the last 5 years watcher of that BBC miniseries. There's a lot of miniseries in general that I'm a bit late to. I will freely admit, and I think that was one that I'd known about, but then it wasn't until a couple of years ago where I sat down and watched it. Nice.
Well, I mean, I'm even later in that I have not actually sat down and watched all of it. I have seen bits of it, like I'm sure many people have. Would you, and I know you've seen it as well, Michael, would you both recommend that miniseries? Should I sit down and watch it?
I think so.
Well, I mean, I feel so biased, yeah, but like this is a series like my mother absolutely loved before I'd seen it, and we had got the DVD, and I feel like we watched some of it together, and it just was... I just have such a like warm feeling towards it, and I really, really, really like the Joe Wright adaptation of Pride and Prejudice 2 with Keira Knightley. But there is something about the TV show that I think is really special. But yeah, it's not cinematic the way we get TV series now, so it does feel a bit like of its time. But she's glorious. Her and Colin Firth, who were dating at the time, I believe. They have such a good chemistry, and I just think she's wonderful. I mean, I love Elizabeth Bennet. I like a lot of Jane Austen protagonists, but yeah, so I would recommend it. And yeah, I'd absolutely love to just sit down. If I had the time, I'd probably watch it every year.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I do actually have it on DVD in one of the many bags, like, cluttering up my room, so maybe I'll dig out and actually sit down and properly watch it. Thank you for that recommendation. I just wanted to pick up on one more thing, I think, before we start venturing down the path, because you made a very interesting comment, Eoin. You said that in Zero Dark 30 there's an energy she has, and I think you're tapping into something that I feel about her, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So sorry to put you on the spot, but can you talk to what you think that energy is? Because I would love someone to help me out and figure out what I see in her.
Yeah, I mean... Okay, on the spot. Here we go. I think it's sort of hard to explain because the energy, it's sort of an energy I feel about a lot of, for lack of a better word, character actresses. It's very much investing in the character in that certain project. She's very, especially in that film, she's very like free and fun and informed at the same time. Like there's even like that 0 to 30 is very much telling us like a story, an important story. And she just kind of brings out certain fun elements from her co-stars. Like I think of the multiple scenes that, because Jessica Chastain is probably her most frequent co-star in that film. And I think there's something that she brings out of Chastain as Maya that is very surprising. And I think it's probably a surprising, oh God, I'm struggling for a word. It's probably it's always something surprising that she brings out of her co-stars. And I think that's the energy that I relate to, because I don't know what going to give me every time, but I think that was definitely on display in 0 Dark 30.
Yeah.
From watching her, like watching these films very close together and thinking about her ability on screen to be this character actor who is this, like, there are similarities between the character she's doing or how she's utilized, but she is never commanding the screen any more than the leading co-star she has. Like, she knows what the story is, fulfilling and what her place is, but she has an ability to be like an every person in a way and like talk sense and sometimes to the protagonist. If you think about A Quiet Passion, she certainly is there as like a meter to what is happening with Emily Dickinson. The same with 0 Dark 30 when she's trying to tell Jessica Chastain to, there's more to life than what you're doing. But she's never... So you're invested in her character to the point that how it affects the protagonist. But you have this confidence that this character will be fine. And even when we see them not succeed in certain films, you never feel like pity them or anything. You're like, well, that's what they're a real person. This is a real sort of believable journey for this character. I don't know, there's something like really relatable about her, which I think we don't get from many movie stars, let's say. Like, I think that's the difference between, say, being a leading woman in a rom-com, like you would never think, I don't know why this person's in my head, but Meg Ryan in those roles, or Sandra Bullock or Julia Roberts, none of those would ever work. I just believe Jennifer Ehle is this wonderful sort of human who's able to fit into the mold of those characters and to be able to elevate the protagonist's story in a really exciting way. And like not take away from it, which I guess is the double-edged sword of me not really remembering her in certain movies, is because her place is to support the whole thing. Even in She Said, like, I think Samantha Morton comes in and has the big, like, cameo moment in terms of one of the victims of sexual assault coming forward. Jennifer Ehle's is kind of like a slow burn. Like, we watch her be intimidated a little bit, or a lot, not a little bit, and then she does have a conversation. And that conversation, like this quiet sort of, reveal of what they had gone through and the impact of that. And there's no unnecessary drama. It's all to help the story go along and to relate to the overall theme. I don't know, there's something really glorious about somebody being able to be absolutely brilliant without having to chomp at the scenery, which I think a lot of actors who we probably traditionally like fall in love with much easier do. There's no Jennifer Coolidge like coming in for a little quiet scene to make a lovely little moment focus on story. If Jennifer Coolidge is walking into a scene, it is about Jennifer Coolidge. Do you know? So I'm great that Jennifer Ehle is you brought her to us, because I think that's such a quiet performer who is so amazing. She just does so much basically with her face, and I bet she's a dream to work with in terms of writers, directors, co-stars. Yeah, I am a little bit in love with her after researching, preparing for this.
Yay, that's ideal.
You've
converted us. Well done.
Yeah. I to say I love that you've mentioned her sort of quietness and not necessarily going loud, because that's knowing that she's a supremely gifted stage actress, and the fact that she can play it so small on screen is really impressive.
Yeah. I've never seen her on stage. I don't know if any of you guys. I mean, she hasn't done that much stage work in the UK and in Europe recently. But yeah, like her presence is really powerful but quiet, which I guess is, as well as, being able to modulate it being these broad things to smaller for screen. I still imagine her walking on stage would be really impactful. Just something about her presence I find very comforting but also alarming, and I really like that.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting way of putting it. Comforting yet alarming. We'd had a discussion before recording this, and Michael, you had mentioned that there was something like ghostly about her, or even like haunted or something. And I do think that kind of really works. There's something in her eyes, and maybe comforting yet alarming is then the perfect way of looking at it in certain things. I am just kind of thrown by her, and I find the image of her very, very memorable. So my first time I can think of like really knowing her was Contagion, probably. And yes, from the film, but even from all of the marketing before the film, from the trailers, the promo stills, and everything that came out before that film was released, her eyes in particular conveyed so much, and that is the image which sticks with me more than anything else in a film full of things that do stick with you and do last, that's for sure. And I think it's exactly that. It's comforting yet alarming. I love it. What an interesting way to be.
Well, I hope that's what I am when I enter a room. Is comforting yet alarming to everyone.
Less of the comforting, more of the alarming.
Depends on the room. Okay, shall I dive into the life and work of Jennifer Ehle?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so the wildest thing we're going to say, again, as you've already mentioned, Owen, is that she is not English. She is American-born. She was born on the 29th of December 1969 in Winston-Salem in North Carolina, which I just don't know why that's still, even though I've known this for a few weeks now, I find it wild that she's American, but good for her. Her father is a writer, or was the writer John Ehle, and her mother is Oscar nominee and Aunt May, the OG Aunt May, Rosemary Harris. And Rosemary Harris being her mother leads to her debut on stage in a 1973 production of A Streetcar Named Desire. Or Streetcar Named Desire? Don't know what I just said. Which her mother, Rosemary, played Blanche Dubois, and I'm assuming Jennifer played the baby at the end of the show. So what a way to enter the world of acting. She does spend her childhood in both the UK and the US, attending several schools, continuing into drama training, where she split her time between the North Carolina School of the Arts and Central School of Speech and Drama in London. She makes her professional acting debut in the 1991 production of Tartuffe for the Peter Hall Company, so starting pretty well. And she gets second prize for the Ian Charleson Awards, which is a huge award for newcomers in the UK. So she's bet by a person called Joe Dixon, but she beats Adrian Lester, Ian Glenn, Tom Hollander, Hugh Bonneville, and Caroline Quinton. So they're like runners up to her. So what a fun little mix of actors. If you were to just look at their trajectories, what a wild time.
I'm most surprised she'd be Caroline Quinton.
Okay, we won't have any dissing of Caroline on this.
Sure.
Caroline, who actually is a current Olivier nominee for something at the National Theatre. So Peter Hall must have absolutely loved working with her in Tartuffe, because he asked her to star in The Chamomile Lawn, a 1992 television 4-episode show where she is reunited with Rosemary Harris again. They shared the same role in different time periods, which is a bit of a novelty. That's quite fun, like that. Yeah. She has a few more TV credits to her name over the next while, including playing an Austrian empress in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which sounds really fun. Her first film comes in 1994 with Backbeat, which is a film about the Beatles pre-fame, and she plays Cynthia Powell, John Lennon's first wife. Not a huge hit, but, not a bad debut either. But it's 1995 where we get Pride and Prejudice that really launches her. So, as we've mentioned, Jennifer plays Elizabeth Bennet in the BBC adaptation of Jane Austen's novel, alongside Colin Firth as Mark Darcy, Alison Steadman as the Mrs. Bennet. It's such a good cast, yeah. Sorry, everyone should watch this show. It's really terrific.
Miss Bennet, please allow me to apologise for not receiving you properly just now. You were not leaving.
We were, sir. I think we must.
I hope you're not displeased with Pemberley.
No, not at all.
Then you approve of it.
Very much. I think there are few who would not approve.
But your good opinion is rarely bestowed and therefore more worth the earning.
And Jennifer Ehle, I feel like herself and Colin Farrell overnight kind of become famous because of this. Like, this is a huge, huge hit. She also wins the TV BAFTA for Best Actress. Now, I guess the trajectory which people would assume would be, a film, a rom-com, all those sorts of things. But actually what happens is she joins the Royal Shakespeare Company. And the same year, so she appears in plays such as Richard III and The Relapse. And her films the film career doesn't happen till 1997. So I'm going to assume that was an active choice on Jennifer's part. It's like, I'm going to do theatre, or figure out what I want to do. I don't know, but it is interesting because you'd assume there'd be loads of roles, potential roles, or at least other big TV shows that would reach wider people. Who knows? But the 90s also, as we talk about often, people didn't jump between TV and film in quite the same way as they do today. So maybe that wasn't going to be a thing. But in 1997, she works on 2 films with some of the most amazing people. So firstly, Paradise Road, which is a film that depicts a group of women who are imprisoned by the Japanese during World War II, and it stars Glenn Close, Frances McDormand, Pauline Collins, Juliana Margulies, and Kate Blanchett and Jennifer Ehle, among many others. It's directed by the guy I can't think of his name off the top of my head, who did Driving Miss Daisy. I haven't watched it all. I watched quite a lot of it. It's trying to do an awful lot of things. It's not a perfect film. I don't know if either of you have seen Paradise Now.
Paradise Road. No, I have not seen.
I've seen Paradise Road a while ago when I was on kind of my Kate Blanchett fully watch. Because I believe, is that her film debut?
That's her first proper debut too.
Oh wow, is it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's a forgettable film for sure, which is wild because you have all of these acting stars and ones who would go on to even you have Juliana Margulies during her ER phase, basically after her ER phase, and you so many people, and it's just so forgettable.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend if you're truly desperate.
Okay.
I would watch it maybe just as a curiosity.
For completists only, that makes sense because it is wild that with a cast like that it's not spoken about more. So that makes complete sense to me that it is probably because it's forgettable.
Yeah, and the trailer alone, you'd be like, whoa, this something isn't working here. But yeah. Completists should watch it for sure.
My husband is Dennis Layton-Jones. We're all Malayan volunteers.
How do you do?
Susan McCarthy, Australian Army Nursing Corps.
Adrian Pargeter, wife of tea planter.
But Wild is the other film from 97, another film with a stacked cast. It is a film about Oscar Wilde, and I guess, maybe because we were watching it for Jennifer Ehle, it almost is like a film about Oscar Wilde and 2 key relationships in his life and kind of the arc of that. So one being his wife, played by Jennifer Ehle, and another, I can't think of his name, Bosie, his first name, but played by Jude Law, who, by all accounts, wasn't a very nice man. But it's about Oscar Wilde and his life, basically. It does actually do more than that. It follows his career, what he's been making, him being imprisoned for his homosexuality. There's a lot going on. We have Stephen Fry playing Oscar Wilde. We have Orlando Bloom in his debut as, a prostitute being beautiful. We have, oh my God, my mind's gone totally blank. Who is his friend? The really great Welsh actor, Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen.
Yeah, we have Zoe Wanamaker. We have Vanessa Redgrave doing an accent which, Lord help me, pretty awful for an Irish accent. I thought she was trying to be Scottish at points. We always badmouthing Vanessa Redgrave on this podcast, but that's shocking.
You are, not me.
Anyway, what do we think of...
I will not have Vanessa Redgrave.
Exactly.
Except for this.
Oh no, I like her performance in general most of the time, but I just don't know why you wouldn't cast someone that could do the accent here, apart from for funding reasons. But yeah, what do we think of Wilde, guys?
I think the 90s was just a time for people wanting to try Irish accents and failing miserably, because this was a year after Julia Roberts' second attempt with Michael Collins and all that sort of stuff.
I thought she was perfect as
but
Kitty.
But speaking about Wilde, I think it's a good film.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's seeing this and Paradise Road kind of side by side in talking about Ehle. It is very interesting that after such a large breakout with Prejudice, she so quickly went into these supporting roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it must have been a choice on her part, because it sort of is continuing to trend throughout the rest of her career. Is kind of choosing the supporting direction versus being the lead, which I get. But I think she's good in Wilde. I just think there's so much going on in Wilde that sometimes I kind of forget about her, other than knowing that in it makes me remember.
Yeah, have you guys seen the Rupert Everett film Happy?
Oh yeah, Happy Prince.
Yeah, so this is where Happy Prince covers the same time in Oscar Wilde's life. It may be a bit later and focuses more on the later time. Absolutely love The Happy Prince. I think The Happy Prince is a beautiful film and achieves an awful lot. And because it's focused on a relationship that kind of leads to his destruction. It's actually like there's moments in Happy Prince that will forever stay with me. I'm only bringing this up because I think watching Wilde, I totally agree with you. There's so much going on that it's hard to connect to it in a way. I think all the performances are great. I think it's a really engaging film. I think it's, as a queer person watching, relatively recent history of someone who is, should be above the law in terms of, the world we live in England, like a rich sort of person who is celebrated, a white man, but he is torn down and treated in such a horrific way for his sexuality is hard to stomach. And I think an important thing to be sharing still for us not to take for granted all the ways we have progressed since then. But yeah, as a film, it felt more like kind of like following like it's beat by beat someone's life and story. I will say Jennifer Ehle's part was way more interesting than I thought it was going to be, as like this wife of a queer person who kind of was there for, to be able to have these social norms. And we there's gossip about her before we see her. There's all kind of people laughing at her almost, or she's not that she's a joke. But there's something about what Jennifer Ehle's doing which gives her the strength, or us to believe she has the strength, to be able to cope with all of that. And towards the end, when she is being so supportive and still, like, rooting for Oscar, I found that really, really moving. I found that the most moving scene in the film when she visits him in prison. Both because of what Stephen Fry's doing, but Jennifer Ehle as well. So I'm really glad to have seen it. But yeah, I'd be recommending The Happy Prince over Wilde if you were to choose one Oscar Wilde biopic.
Yeah, I would, but I would say Stephen Fry is the better performance. Even though I really like Rupert Everett, I think Stephen Fry is really, really great in Wilde. And it's maybe silly to compare them, but it feels like a born to play situation. I know there probably has always been a lot of comparisons and love there, Stephen Fry for Oscar Wilde. So maybe it was just too natural and at the right time that it was just inevitable that it was going to happen. I think he's great. I think Jennifer Ehle is also great at having that sort of unbridled loyalty even through difficult circumstances. And again, she just has this real knack for making you feel for her in this situation and the pain that she also feels. I think what she can do in these quiet moments without even saying a word, just her face, and again it's those eyes, there's just something that's so easy to sort of, yes, get behind and feel for, and she's great for that.
And Jude Law is gorgeous in it too. I feel like that's an important thing to say. You can see why he would lead to a destruction of your whole life, falling in love with Jude Law. Weirdly, or I find this weird, so the film gets Jennifer Ehle a BAFTA nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Terrific. But also Zoe Wanamaker, who I was kept expecting something to happen with Zoe Wanamaker in the film, but she doesn't. Her best bit is when Oscar leaves prison and says to her, like, oh, you always know the perfect hat for the perfect occasion or something. But it's nothing to do with Zoe Wanamaker other than she's wearing the hat. Other than that, I wouldn't remember her in the movie, but like they didn't even nominate Stephen Fry. So I don't know what was going on there, but nice that Jennifer Ehle, in her only film BAFTA nomination, was recognised here.
Good. Nice.
She then goes in another supporting role in Sunshine, starring alongside Ralph Fiennes and Rachel Weisz, and guess who? Rosemary Harris. She has a handful of films in the noughties as well, such as Gwyneth Paltrow starring Possession in 2002. But it's theatre where she's being really celebrated, which includes a production of Tom Stoppard's The Real Thing, where she wins the Tony Award for Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role. And she was nominated against Rosemary Harris for that, which seems fun that you'd beat your mother. In a professional capacity. I know. That's basically, it's hard to get interviews with Jennifer online outside of theatre, and this is one question she's asked repeatedly. Is like, was it awkward with you and your mum? She's like, no, we were just both happy to be nominated, and sure, Rosemary Harris has however many accolades and things already. So yeah, terrific. She also is in a production of No Cowards Dying for a Living with Dominic West and Alan Cumming. And dare we say, mention Kevin Spacey, but she was at the Old Vic in 2005 in a production of The Philadelphia Story. And also then went to do Macbeth as part of Shakespeare in the Park in 2006. Also in 2006, she wins a second Tony for the Tom Stoppard play The Coast of Utopia, winning for featured actress in a play. And I guess this theatre a little bit rounds off with a production of Mr. and Mrs. Fitch with John Lithgow in 2010. So having a great old time, and if you lived in Broadway in particular, what a treat to be able to see her in all these different sorts of roles. But rather excitingly, I've skipped something. She was around this time going to be in Game of Thrones. So she was going to be Catelyn Stark? Why can't I think of... Anyway, the mother of the Starks, and she even filmed the pilot, but she felt it was too soon to return to work after the birth of her child, and so she was replaced by the absolutely brilliant Michelle Fairley. But that, oh my God, if Jennifer Ehle was in Game of Thrones as that character, I feel like that would have been a huge moment for her too. Right? I don't know. She would have been terrific in that part. That's a great part.
Yeah, no, that I didn't actually know that was a possibility for her. Yeah, no, that would have been fascinating to see.
It's a bit like, you know, they teased us with that Naomi Watts Game of Thrones spin-off, which in my head I'm like, that'd be brilliant, but we'll never know. We'll never know for whatever reason. But in 2010, she does return to the big screen, reuniting, although in a very small way, with Colin Firth. So it's The King's Speech, which I feel like this is an Oscar, you know, King's Speech went on to win Best Picture at the Oscars, is a film that I feel like a lot of people watch. You know, nowadays I feel like sometimes films win Best Picture Oscar and lots of people haven't seen them. But I feel like The King's Speech was a big deal at the time. And Jennifer Ehle plays the wife of Geoffrey Rush, who is a speech therapist who is helping Colin Firth, who plays George Sixth. He plays the king, and he has a stutter because he was left-handed, and then they made him not be left-handed, so now he has a stutter, and he needs to make a speech, and Geoffrey has to teach him. So Jennifer Ehle is concerned about her husband because she doesn't really know what he's doing, and then suddenly she finds out that it's the king that he's working with when he turns up at the door.
I'm told your husband calls my husband Bertie, and my husband calls your husband Lionel. I trust you won't call me Liz.
Your Majesty, you may call me Mrs. Logue.
Very nice to meet you, Mrs. Logue.
Jennifer doesn't have much to do, but she's rather wonderful in it. She gets the tone of it's like a cozy biopic film that has some like deep darker elements to it, but her part is kind of there as like a loving wife who has a bit of fun. And I assume they would have known, people watching would have got a bit of a kick out of seeing her in a scene with Colin Firth. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think of The King's Speech. The King's Speech is a film which happens to a lot of Oscar winners, which I feel like with time people are like, oh, it's overrated, or it's not exciting, or it's bland, or whatever it is. But I quite like it. I've no strong opinion on it. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I definitely don't hate it. There, like, when people kind of get into conversations about this is the worst thing ever, I don't understand that, because I think it's a competently made film. Like, it's not seeking to offend you, and I think that's probably why it was so easy for it to sort of be that choice that everyone could get behind, and also with the campaign by Thou Who Shall Not Be Named.
Well, I've already mentioned Kevin Spacey. I feel like I'm just like mentioning anyone. But yes, the Weinsteins.
I only say that because of She Said, and how that sort of the kind of crossover between those films, which is actually an interesting thing to think about, is Jennifer Ehle playing a victim of assault from Harvey Weinstein while being, but also being in a film that was largely successful for him.
Yeah, and probably one of the last like truly successful films of the Weinstein sort of era, was it? I can't think off the top of my head.
I think The Artist, the following year,
okay, forget about The Artist.
Last.
Yeah. God, what a time! Like, God, he really did have control.
Yeah, gosh, things have changed a lot since his downfall. It really was like, if it was the Weinstein machine, it was, you're in. Taking down very mighty competitors. We should also say that we are recording on the day of the Oscar ceremony 2023. Things are looking very different now, away from the Weinstein era and in the year of She Said, which we'll come on to maybe talk about a little bit more.
Well, it should be the year of She Said.
No,
I'm joking. I mean, but it should have been more in the conversation. Anyway, that's a different podcast,
definitely.
talking about Oscars not maybe looking at female-led movies as much as they should. But yes, we are talking on the holy day.
On the holy day, but one that now Weinstein doesn't have so much of an impact over, but apparently now, where we have the likes of Frances Fisher, she's now the Weinstein of the time.
That shit stirrer, yeah.
With maneuvers no one knew she had within her. Amazing. But I will say that, so besides the Weinstein machine, I certainly wasn't into this film for him, but At the time that I first saw this, when it was in the cinemas in 2010, I guess I reckon I must have been 18. To me, The King's Speech was as good as it got when I first saw it. I saw it in the cinema so many times. I was very much in the King's Speech camp. So when all the hate started, because it wasn't Social Network, I was really confused. I found Social Network at 18 to be really chilly and distant, and I couldn't buy into it. At that point in time, I obviously was more into sentimentality and emotional buy-in, and I very much got it. I remember literally sitting watching The King's Speech with my feet up on the chair, like, wow, this is so thrilling. And now watching it back, I was like, goodness, I was a different person. Like, I still think it's a lovely film and I really enjoyed it, but wow, I don't think it is what I did those years ago. But still, yes, I very much am not in the mood of tearing it down, because I actually think, like you say, it's very competently made. There's really lovely performances. It's sweet, it's funny, it's charming. And yeah, Jennifer Ehle is really cute. Now, I hadn't even clocked the Colin Firth thing. Maybe she was cast purely for that moment where he walks in the door, and I don't believe you've met the king, and it's like, ow, that is fun. Okay, I'm kind of sold on the idea, even if it was just like that. Oh, let's get Jennifer Ehle, and like, this is too good to resist.
But I second everything you said. I mean, I probably rate it, like, I don't change my rating of it that much over time. Like, I like The Social Network, I like The King's Speech, grand, but I'm sure there was another movie I probably would have loved much more than those two at the time. But I, as Scott will know, particularly when it comes to Oscar conversation, I'm like, but they're all so good, and like, it's just an opinion. At the end of the day, it does not matter, and we should not be tearing down movies. Also, something that really hasn't been talked about enough is, like, left-handed stories are not spoken about enough in the world. So to have The King's Speech as like as one of the biggest left-handed representational films, it's important to left-handers like me, because I'm like the king.
So you are.
No, but I wasn't forced to. Not forced to the degree that he was to write with my right hand. Certainly, I might have other symptoms of what happened, but I don't stutter.
Okay, gosh. It might explain a lot of other things. Jeez.
Exactly, yeah, maybe that's why, maybe there's a lot of reasoning for my lifestyle and such because of that. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Well, that's great. I love that we all enjoy The King's Speech. So yeah, it's a lovely Sunday film, Nice. And Colin Farrell isn't in it. Colin Firth is lovely in it.
Oh my god, I would love to have seen Colin Farrell.
I held my tongue earlier when you were talking about Pride and Prejudice. You said Colin Farrell.
Oh, did I?
And...
Oh god, I didn't even clock
I'm
it
the
earlier.
worst.
There's too much Farrell at the moment.
Yeah, I'm always trying to get Irish people into stuff as well, so that is the other reason. But no, I confuse names. So apologies for saying earlier Colin Farrell's in Pride and Prejudice. He would have been a child. That would have been wild. I would like to watch it, but yeah, maybe he will do a Jane Austen. He would be terrific. I mean, yeah. Anyway. Let's talk about Jennifer Ehle. So then in 2011, she has two quite, I think, prestigious films, again, with a great cast. The Ides of March, the George Clooney film, and Contagion, which has had a life of its own because of COVID. So as you mentioned earlier, Scott, Ehle plays a scientist racing to produce a vaccine and save humanity, which, was something I think people were interested in watching. I actually never watched this film when it came out, didn't watch it during COVID, didn't watch it in preparation for this, because I want to be in denial about COVID for the moment. And but have you both seen it? Are you both fans of Contagion and what she's up to there?
Well, I saw it at the time. I have no thoughts or feelings of wanting to go back and watch it. Not because of any ill feelings towards it, because I think it's a fine feature. It's just, it's a bit too, I don't understand the people who race to watch it when the pandemic first hit, because that's quite scary.
A peculiar choice.
It was quite frightening to me.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. But I think her role is like kind of all the rest of the performers in the film, where it's much to work with. I think the performer who I think about most from this film is Gwyneth Paltrow, and sometimes not for great thoughts, her face just sticks out to me from I think everyone is aware of her role in the film.
The moment, the iconic moment. Yes, I say that Jennifer Ehley's the one that lives with me because she does, but there is also that image of Gwyneth Paltrow's face that I'll always be like, oh yes, there's no getting away from that one. I really like Contagion. Haven't seen it since it came out. Also would want distance, especially during COVID. I certainly didn't want to go anywhere near anything like that. But I think it's great. I mean, I'm a big Soderbergh fan, and I love the variety of stuff that he puts out, and I love watching the sort of landscape of Soderbergh cinema and reflecting back on it and what he was up to at any one time, and in many cases, what other films did he put out in the same year? Because surely also the busiest director working in Hollywood ever. Yeah, so I would certainly recommend it, and I think Jennifer is great, but it's a big cast, so even though her role is very important, given what she is the scientist working towards the cure, so obviously a very, very important part, and again, she brings the emotional heft, which is very valuable within that film. But there's so many people that, you know, she doesn't necessarily have a huge chunk of screen time, but I think probably as much as anyone else, so it's a good one to watch for her, for sure.
Yeah, I may never watch it, but glad. And I have seen Ides of March, but couldn't for the life of me really remember her in it.
Remember her in it? No, I can't remember her in it.
But great, again, that's another huge cast, a lot of characters moving around, and she would be supporting, but not leading. But here comes another ensemble film in a prestige sort of project where actually Jennifer's supporting role is more central to the plot. She's very important in Zero Dark 30, the Kathryn Bigelow film from 2012, which again is a Oscar nominee, Best Picture. Doesn't win, unlike The King's Speech, but she's really terrific. I mean, we've already talked about this a little bit, but Zero Dark 30 follows Jessica Chastain's character, Maya. It is Maya, not Maya. Yeah. Maya. In the hunt for Osama bin Laden, essentially, and it works in it's a really fascinating film. I mean, this is a film which at the time got such a huge backlash because of its depiction of torture in particular. I feel like it's fair to say that's what the hangover of that movie in my memory is, that people were so aggressive or against it because of how it depicted torture. To illustrate the degree of which people were talking about it, why can't I think of the guy who ran for presidency, John McCain, who had suffered torture in Vietnam? He wrote to the studio to be like, can you pull this or do something around this, because this is too depicting torture in too ambiguous a way, if not in a positive light, as in torture was a helpful device in the finding of bin Laden. Now, all of that aside, the film operates in a very sort of thriller-esque way. It's very effective, it's very good, it's all very good, but when you talk about it in real terms, it is a bit I don't know, I find that a hard sort of thing to get past with this movie, and enjoy it as a whole. But I think it's a really well-made movie that's really engaging and works as a thriller, until I start thinking about it in real-life terms, because thankfully I don't have enough knowledge about war or the world that it's depicting there. But I do like it as it operates as a film. And I really love Jennifer Ehley's part in it, because Jessica Chastain's character is very serious, and you see kind of another option of how somebody could operate in this world. And Jennifer Ehley's having, she's really dedicated to her job, but she's having a nice time too, she's living her life.
You two hooked up yet? Hello, I work with him. I'm not that girl that fucks. It's unbecoming.
So, no fooling around wouldn't hurt you. So no boyfriend?
Mm-mm.
You got any friends at all?
Although she's kind of punished for that, and then Jessica Chastain goes further into the darker elements, let's say, or determination. So it is an interesting film. it's really, I guess, loaded, but yeah, I'm glad to have revisited it because it's not a film I ever would ever occur to me to go back and watch.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll talk to not like the opposite, 'cause I think we feel similarly. But I love this film. Would go back and watch this film. I'm not America hoorah in any way. I'm not pro-torture in any way. I think I maybe remove the two sides of it. So for me, it's a war procedural type film. I do like procedural films. My favorite subgenre is watching people who are exceptional at their jobs being exceptional at their jobs, and especially where they're giving moments to be incredibly confident about something that otherwise they perhaps ought not to be. I think Jessica Chastain is revelationary, incredible in this film. I think it's perfect casting. But I think there's all the things that I find uncomfortable about the film, perhaps, like the torture, or even the extended sequence at the end, which is the moment of finding, or kind of, leading towards the finding of Bin Laden. I think those are important to be included, whether positive, messagery loaded within or not. I think given the nature of the procedure and the process and that sort of drive behind the film and what it means for Jessica Chastain's character in particular. It's a journey for her. She goes through this, and you could almost perhaps look at it in some ways as a piece of fiction, because she is a fictional character, and kind of the journey of a woman at the heart of something which feels so incredibly masculine, or probably felt about in that sort of way with hindsight. So I'm a big fan of this film. I think Jennifer Ehle is terrific, again, because she has an energy, like you said, Eoin, that's so different to other people. In this, and you kind of touched upon this earlier, there's a kind of reliability to her in this. Like, you can feel a competence about this woman in her job. You can feel that she's lived in. She sort of kind of has a fun and more free energy than Jessica Chastain's character, for sure. But there is just this sturdy competence, reliability, and trust, again, in those eyes and that face, which I think makes her a striking presence within the film. Her face is striking within these set pieces of rooms filled with men. There's something about her which is just an incredibly welcome and reassuring presence. So yeah, that's a little insight into my feelings on Zero Dark Thirty. What about you, Eoin?
Yeah, I loved the film at the time. I haven't revisited it in the kind of 10 years since it came out. I did revisit the first part of it for this Jennifer Ehle rewatch. I kind of stopped watching once Jennifer Ehle's part was no longer there.
Sure. ... Yeah.
But no, I loved it at the time, and the controversy, I guess, I was just sort of I just sort of looked past it because I just found it a bit kind of overblown, especially at the point in which the controversy hit its peak. And I think it was just one of those campaigning techniques from the campaigner man, whose presence was still strong at this time. And unfortunately, it kind of took down the film, which I don't think it deserved to be, because it's a really great sort of thriller. It really moves quickly. The set pieces are so exceptionally filmed, and you really kind of, even just thinking about moments, I remember the look, the shots, what is happening in the scenes, like vividly, even 10 years I was not having watched it again. It just kind of sticks with you in only the best ways. And I think the controversy, I guess, it was just it's stupid, basically, to use a lack of a better word. And I think thankfully the film kind of sticks strongly in the minds. I would say it's still a beloved film, decade removed.
Yeah, I'm glad to have revisited it for Jennifer Ehle, because I guess I would have taken for granted what she was doing in it. So yeah, and I think about her ending halfway through the film. I think that easily could have felt like oh, what a victim, or what a, but instead it's like, no, like they are, as you were saying, Scott, so good at their job. Like they knew what the risks were. They knew, like, there's a sense of it being part and parcel of this sort of, this journey, but there's not like emotion attached to it in a way that I think another filmmaker or another film would have done. If you think of a war film from the 1940s or something, that moment would have been treated like, that's it, let's go gung-ho and let's go and attack the Japanese or whatever they were going to depict, the Germans. But yeah, so I like it. Sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying I agree with you. I probably won't ever watch the film again. I find it really unpleasant, but it is really good.
I think it's... I feel like what Owen described about some bits are so memorable, though, and exciting, that I am drawn back to it to revisit the excitement of that.
Yeah, I just don't rewatch war films. I guess it's not this film in particular. It's just not a genre, or unless, I don't know. At least it's not very pro-American in a sort of old-fashioned way, or pro-British, which a lot of the war films are.
Yeah. Just talk once more about Jennifer. I think that what happens with her character, while it does kind of exemplify what you were speaking about earlier in that sort of supporting the leading star, and her role, and how it does affect what happens with the character, with the Jessica Chastain character going on, not so instantly. It definitely kind of changes the character, and I think with the work that Jennifer does in the film, it is that much more effective. I think if a different performer was in that role, it wouldn't progress the rest of the film to where it goes as strongly as it does with Jennifer in this role.
Yeah. And there is a sense of a loss, in terms of watching the film and the people working when she's gone. But it is done, as you say, in kind of a gradual way, as opposed to sort of, I don't know, emotional stakes or sentimental, which I think easily just happen in war films. And speaking of war films, no, she was in A Little Chaos. No, A Little Chaos, what a film! But she's continuously working in these really small roles. So she's like in RoboCop, as I mentioned, A Little Chaos, the Alan Rickman directed film where she plays the Queen. She does the first of the series of 50 Shades of Grey in 2015. And beyond. I actually don't know. It's over now, right? 50 Shades of Grey, but there were 3 movies. She was in all of them.
Yes.
In 2016, we get, which I think is a really wonderful film, which I've not widely seen, Little Men, the Ira Sachs film, with herself and Greg Kinnear as a couple who basically are part of a gentrification of an area and push out. It's Paula Garcia, out of a home that they've inherited. Really great film. I think Jennifer Ehle's terrific in it. And we also get A Quiet Passion, another film which is kind of underseen by another great queer filmmaker, Terence Davies. And A Quiet Passion, Owen, was one film which I am so glad you suggested us to rewatch, because I had seen A Quiet Passion, could not for the life of me picture Jennifer Ehle in it. But now rewatching it, I find it wild I didn't. So, like, it's the story of Emily Dickinson, played by Cynthia Nixon. Well, at the start it's played by a younger version of everything, until they do this amazing sort of portrait CGI, like, morph into their older selves. So Cynthia Nixon takes over as Emily Dickinson, and it's about her life, writing and being secluded in a way, and we see that with her mother and her father, her sister, played by Jennifer Ehle, and her brother. And yeah, it really is that. Like, that is the film. That's the setup. It is about her life in that house with these characters interacting. And Terence Davies is kind of a master of a slow burner sort of emotional journey where nothing happens, but big things happen at the same time, in a way. I know he's made films that are not like that too, but I'm really glad to have revisited it. My memory wasn't very positive of A Quiet Passion. I liked it, but this time I found it really nourishing. I thought it was really, I want to say lovely, but it was more than lovely. It really moved me. So were you a fan, Owen, or was there another reason you had mentioned A Quiet Passion?
No, I'm definitely a fan of A Quiet Passion. Terence, I mean, it's very rare that I would not be a fan of a Terence Daly feature. He just sort of, like, as you say, the slow burn, I find it really effective every time. I think I can understand why people might not necessarily connect with his films as much as, say, I would, but I think this is just another great example of how he kind of, it just pulled me in to getting to know. I mean, I was aware of Emily Dickinson's poetry from, in education systems when you have to read the poems and do the exams and stuff like that. And I didn't necessarily explore who Emily Dickinson was as a person. I think this film kind of is a great biopic, but it doesn't feel like a biopic. It just feels like a film that happens to be following Emily Dickinson. It just happens to be. It's not like, it doesn't fit into the boxes of a dodgy biopic. It just kind of feels much freer and much more alive.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true. It is. I mean, I'm with you that it would be rare for me not to be a fan of a Terence Davies film. I'm a big fan. Love him. And yeah, I think this one has so many interesting elements artistically. It's just really interesting and unusual even to watch. I love what you're saying, that it feels freer, and it just happens to be about. I kind of like that as a way of looking at. It is not necessarily a biopic. It certainly doesn't feel like one. It more feels like a character study and the kind of relationships which surround her. Jennifer Ehle being key as her sister, and the two of them together, Cynthia Nixon and Jennifer Ehle, to me make a very good pairing and very important, I think, tonally for this film. There are a lot of feelings in this film. There's a lot of quiet sobbing, sometimes less quiet. But the two of them in particular, you've got Cynthia Nixon as this sort of prickly-edged Emily Dickinson, and then Jennifer Ehle, kinder, warmer, welcome, when she sort of walks into the scene. A gentleness again, just something that I reckon, I feel like we're surely onto something that casting directors must often, when casting her, not just be looking for a very talented performer, but someone who just brings the right energy and dynamic for balance and for other performers to play against. I think Cynthia Nixon shines because she's working opposite Jennifer Ehle as well, because I think they complement each other.
What is it?
From Austen. Likenesses of Austen and his bride-to-be, Susan Gilbert.
Oh.
Austen as handsome as ever.
But she looks terrified. We must welcome her.
It's great, yes. I will champion pretty much any Terence Davies film. I'm a fan of this one.
Yeah, and I think Jennifer Ehle, because she's very still almost, or like conforms to this world of like women being decorative and silent, or not doing much for a lot of the movie, but towards the end in particular, or maybe halfway through, she has more and more of a voice and more of an identity, and more of like, we've been listening to Emily Dickinson talking about like what her feelings are about the world and what she wants to change or she thinks is wrong, etc., etc. But when we have Jennifer Ehle vocalizing that in a much more personal way, she's not thinking of a greater scale of like, this is what a woman should be able to do. She's talking about like, Emily, really just, come down the stairs, or don't be rude, or don't, but she's not saying it in an annoying way, which I think would be very easy. She's saying it as like, enjoy life a little bit. Like, you need to be easier on yourself, and more than that, you need to be easier because it's pissing me off.
Emily, why do you behave like this? He is a kind man, and he was hurt.
I don't know. As soon as they get too close, I feel as if I'm suffocating.
I think there's she's conveying a lot in the sequences she has. And yeah, you're dead right. Like, I love Cynthia Nixon in general. I think, and I know all the stuff of now when they brought back Sex and the City and her character doesn't make much sense and it's so over the top and camp. But I really enjoy Cynthia Nixon as a screen presence, small or big. So I'm really amazing that she got this lead part and that she gets to excel in it. Her breaking a plate when her dad has been telling her to behave more like a woman, and he tells her the plate is dirty, and she just smashes it in reaction. It's terrific, like so well done. But yeah, so I'm really glad to have rewatched it, and yeah, I just love spending time in a Terence Davies sort of film. Like the tone of it is I find so gorgeous. So yeah, I liked it a lot. So I'm so glad. Out of all these films, this is the one I'm really grateful for being encouraged to rewatch. I really, really liked it. And it should have won Best CGI or Best Visual Effects at the Oscars. However they do that merging.
It's amazing.
Honestly, it was like, because they do it, for 5 characters. I'm like, whoa. Love it. And the other one person and one performance in the film that I absolutely loved this time was Joanna Bacon as the mother. And I just think it was really powerful, like as this sort of a person who has suffered because of social norms, I'm going to suggest from what is depicted in the film, but has like a light in her life too. Like she is excited about life. I just really love that character. And I think if you had a Greta Gerwig or somebody more established perhaps in the industry doing that, like you'd have a Meryl Streep or Emma Thompson or somebody doing that part. But to watch somebody like Joanna Bacon get that role and do it so perfectly, I really enjoyed that. And the same for Cynthia Nixon, to be fair. No way is Greta Gerwig putting Cynthia Nixon in a lead part. So I love that Terence Davies has this kind of intuitive interest in actors, and how this film was cast is similar to the rest of his films.
Yeah, I think this is a great sort of double feature with his most recent film, Benediction. They both kind of get into poetry and storytelling, and again, they're non-traditional true life storytellings. They're about real people, but they're so much different. And I think if you were a fan of Benediction from this year, which I think has been viewed, maybe not entirely by a lot of people, but by enough people that if you've not seen his previous film, A Quiet Passion, I think you should.
Good call. Yeah.
Watch all the Terence Davies films. I mean, all of them, I would say. But yes, I agree. Quiet Passion is up there. And it's a shame because, again, with Cynthia Nixon as well, but Jennifer Ehle, it doesn't really lead to anything huge. Like, so we have the sequel to 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker in 2017. We have a very small and credited part in Detroit, the Kathryn Bigelow film. A film called Wetlands. She's in the Miseducation of Cameron Post. Vox Lux, which is an exciting film, I guess, but I don't know. I would have thought something like Quiet Passion might have opened some doors. She does go back to theatre, I should say, in 2017 to do Oslo, which was a really celebrated play. She's nominated for a Tony Award for Best Actress again. Doesn't win this time, but seeing as she's got 2 Tonys, great. Spread the wealth, all for that. I guess the most exciting films, which we've mentioned both already, so Saint Maud happens in 2019, and now that is a film to build on what we've seen of Jennifer Ehle. It is a wonderful kind of horror, campy, witchy, ghost-like film where we see Morford Clark as a nurse who comes into the home of Jennifer Ehle to look after her. But is she? What are the motivations? What are these characters getting out of it? The setup of this story, like this ghostly like house, or like a Victorian old house in a way. Maybe Victorian's not the right description of this house, but it is like an old house which you could imagine in a Hitchcock film. And this nurse turning up to look after this kind of tempestuous sort of character, dangerous, very confident, does not like independent, but because of her physical disabilities, unable to be independent. It's just such a great dynamic between this nurse who is a kind of a Bible bashing person, but she's not. She's like we know from the off something is not quite right with this character, because they're like leaning on religion as a kind of a necessity to get through life. They're unhinged, I guess, is the best way to describe this nurse. But yeah, what do you guys make of Saint Maud?
Yeah, Saint Maud is. I anticipated that film so much because it premiered in 2019. I think the Sundance Film Festival, and it took so long for it to be released. And I just remember the whole time being like, I need to see this film. People are saying these such incredible things about it. And when I finally did watch it, I was blown away. I think it's...
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the director has done a film prior, but I think
this was her debut, yeah. So we should say Rose Glass, yeah. And she went on, sorry, because I think Rose Glass is a name we're all going to know very well in like 10, 15 years' time, because her next film is with Kirsten Stewart, and I just think, like, what a competent, like, debut, like, how amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's frightening in ways that films attempt to be. I think it frightens you both physically, but most importantly mentally. I think it plays with you, in sort of your expectations and the kind of eeriness of the whole thing. And it's just it's a type of film that I love because the buzz and reception of it is built on its quality. And I think when people recommend it because of its strong quality, and it's just. This is, and especially with it, Jennifer Ehle being such a massive part of it. I mean, I know we're still in the kind of 5-year span since it was released. I'm hopeful that I think this, like something like this, would lead to more opportunities because she's that incredible in it, and the director really gives her the space to kind of impress. Yeah, but I know I love Saint Maud, and I'm just so glad that it took 2 years, but I was able to see it. I was going to rewatch it before this, but I was like, I don't know if today I was in the mood to be scared as it sets me off.
It is frightening, and she is. I was saying this actually to Scott the other day. Like something I like looking at it again now is like it's almost like Bette Davis or something. Like the tone of what Jennifer Ehle's bringing. It's this. I just don't think we get so many characters like that. She is shit stirring the person who is there to look after her.
Maud is my savior, you see. She's been looking out for me in more ways than one. But you got a little carried away, didn't you? So what is it? Am I indecent?
No, you're lost.
There's something really exciting about watching her have this power and to know this nurse will always kind of look after them because maybe the religious stuff, like when she tells her like that she's queer, and is like poking at Morford Clark's nurse to be like, what you gonna do, and then at the party when she is mocking her in front of everybody as Morford Clark's doing her job, I find it all so exciting to watch. And yeah, I would love if people had something about this sort of, again, like I was saying, like she has this strength in terms of her persona, and she does this so well in this film, which easily could have been, I don't know, I feel like it could have been maybe one note, but there's something about all the things she's doing. Yeah, I just was trying to figure out like what is the strength here of playing a character who physically is not able to look after themselves, but they, in their head, are like, I'm going to fuck up the person that's responsible for me. It's like, what is going on there? Like, because it's not like she's self-destructive in a way. She just is, like, this is how she enjoys life. But it's believable. I just don't think I'd believe that in my own world if I was engaging with this. I guess it's a horror tone, but I found it so enjoyable to watch Jennifer treat Morford Clark this way. Because Morford Clark is a pretty disturbed and awful person in the film.
Yeah, it's quite something. I would, for anyone who perhaps likes their double bills, thematically similar but tonally pulls apart, I would recommend this alongside Passion Fish. If you want to see...
Are you talking about the Alfred Woodard?
Yeah, a perfect double bill because
Oh my
they're
God.
exactly the same. No, tonally, they are a million miles away from each other. It's just another film I love and always happy to shout about. This film is exciting for all of the reasons you both describe. I love that it dares to be literal, or at least hint at that in a way that other lesser films wouldn't, and everything would remain kind of boringly ambiguous. And when you dare to be literal and dare to take that risk in terms of its connection, the lead character's connection to the spiritual space, however you want to kind of look at it, I really enjoy how literal it is, and especially how that manifests towards the end, and how we get to see Jennifer Ehle towards the end.
Yeah.
It's kind of this evolution of a character. So for every other film we've described, I've talked about this kindness, softness, warmth, where here she's a serpent. I think she is a snake woman, and I love getting to watch the arc of her character and how it plays against Morpeth Clark's character as Maud. It's really, really something. I'm a big fan and recommend it highly, like both of you do.
It might be my favourite Jennifer Ehle film.
I mean, I'm going to go still Zero Dark 30, but I love this, yes.
I can absolutely see why you would say that. It's definitely one of the strongest films, not just as a film, but also to showcase her at her greatest. And I think that is an added bonus to why you would think of it as her greatest film.
And I do think we should say Saint Maud was nominated at the BAFTA Film Awards for Outstanding British Film and debut by a British writer, director, or producer. And it is a shame that it didn't find a way to include Jennifer Ehle and Morford Clark, who I think is exceptional at this. People might know Morford Clark better for the new Lord of the Rings TV show Ring of Power, where she plays Gladriel, or I was about to say Kate Blanchett, but she does not play Kate Blanchett. She plays It is Gladriel, right? That's the correct character.
Yes.
Gladriel. Apologies. But yeah, while we can still hope that Jennifer Ehle will get more from Saint Maud, the next two films, one was a film I've never heard of before, with the title which made me giggle when I first heard it, John in the Hole, which it's not gay porn. It is a film about a little boy being stuck in a hole. And then She Said, which we've talked about already. And we've already talked about Jennifer Ehle's place in that, but I do hope again that part leads to more. She Said is a type of movie which somehow didn't find an audience. Maybe it's too close to what's happened with the Me Too movement, but it certainly wasn't as successful as perhaps it could have been or deserves to be, as a very solid film about, a very important subject, but told in a really entertaining way, with loads of great performances in it. Yep. So perhaps maybe this is a trend of hers, of like films coming out that aren't quite connecting with audiences. Films like The Quiet Passion, Saint Maud, and She Said, and hopefully over time it kind of just builds and something big does change in her career, or she just keeps getting these really great supporting parts where we can just enjoy her in these really solid, exciting films.
Yeah.
But yeah. Is there anything about She Said and her in it that you'd like to add in addition to what we said earlier?
I just think it's, the moment in the film where she's by the seaside telling the story about what happened is a really incredible moment for her and for the film. I think the way that the film chooses to not show the act, the way it chooses to show the room and those details, and allow Jennifer to, through voiceover, tell the story, and so honestly and so effectively tell the story, is a really great cinematic choice.
I just felt that it was this huge error of judgment that sort of marked me and all my decisions. And I felt such shame that I let him do that.
And I think a moment like that is going to get overlooked, unfortunately, because it's much smarter than, I guess, mainstream audiences would want. They would want the story to be explosive. They want this. They would want the screaming. They would want to see it. And I think the film going out of its way to never show someone being abused. I think the closest it gets to that is the opening shot of the young Jennifer Ehle character running down the streets of somewhere in Ireland, Belfast. Is that it? I think I could be wrong. Somewhere.
No,
after...
it is. Yeah. No, and we should say so that it's a real character, Laura Madden, who was one of the first women to come forward alongside Ashley Judd. Yeah, and so what we see depicted at the start of the film, that is Ireland, and that's all. Like, she gets to work in the film industry because she stumbles along a Harvey Weinstein set. Yeah, we should say Jennifer is not doing an Irish accent in this film.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank
I could
God.
imagine she would do an effective one because she's, I don't know, her accent is so unplaceable for me sometimes.
Yeah.
Even just hearing her speak in interviews, that I could imagine her doing an Irish accent. But anyway, back to her, and she said, I think it is a performance that stuck with me since I saw it. I do believe it to be one of the best performances of the past year of film.
Yeah, and it really could have been, if the film was really taken up like that, or her and Samantha Morton easily could have been in the conversation for supporting actress. Yeah.
I mean, I personally would have had her in the supporting actress lineup of my dreams. I think she does enough with. She's a definitive supporting character, and I think, unfortunately, part of why she was overlooked was because of a co-star of hers being placed down in supporting jury awards.
Yeah,
who is very much not a supporting character when you look at her alongside the cameo roles of Morton and Ehle.
What exactly are you talking about? I'm obsessed with Carey Mulligan in it, but yes, I think you're dead right. Yeah, that kind of category placing is a real shame for actors like Jennifer Ehle or Samantha Morton. But yeah, to be fair though, even if they placed them differently this year, I don't think that would have happened for them. Do you know what's funny? Thinking of Jennifer now, like there's a bit, like it's the bit where the phone call, and like she's kind of being harassed again about like, you have to be quiet, and she puts the phone down, and there's a moment there I'm like, whoa, like that is so good. Like, you understand this character totally, and unlike some films where you have to have music or something like telling you in such a very kind of specific way, it's all Jennifer Ehle's performance. Yeah, really, at the very least, she should have got a SAG award for Best Ensemble, perhaps, or a nomination. That would actually been a really great way to have celebrated, she said, at this award season.
Yeah, agreed. You're making, both of you talking about it, make me want to like rewatch it right now, because it also, to tie back to what I said about like Zero Dark 30 and that kind of subgenre I love, it's people being exceptional at their work and choosing to do something challenging. And for anyone else who's on that that niche, perhaps train with me in terms of genre love, it's a great one.
Mm-hmm. And I don't believe Jennifer has anything announced upcoming. He says unconvinced of his own research.
Well, she's going to be in the new Dead Ringer series, the one with Rachel Weisz, the TV show that's premiering, I think in April, very soon. So she has a role in it. So hopefully it's something for her to play with.
Very exciting.
Yes, and I can't even... Yeah, so there's no films currently, but let's hope conversations are happening and she'll find her way. But again, just to reiterate how happy I am that you brought her to us to focus on, because I will forever be now a Jennifer Ehle stan. Now, instead of talking about Victor Garber in a nightclub at 2 a.m. to people who don't want to hear about it, I'm talking about Jennifer Ehle instead. So, thank you.
Yeah.
And to round off everything, we're going to select one film we'd love to see her do, or a filmmaker we'd like her to see connected with in her future. So I don't know if you've prepared something, Owen, and if you'd like to go first.
I hadn't prepared anything, but director just came to mind, so I'm go with it. So I think the director that I would like to see her work with is Steve McQueen. I think I mean, the film, I mean, he's made four films and then small acts of, I guess, 9, 10, basically. And each one of them I love each and every one of them, and the work he gets out of the women he casts, whether it's Carey Mulligan, all the cast of Widows, Lupita Nyong'o, or any of the cast of small acts. I think that would be a one, and his upcoming star, Saoirse Ronan, I would expect to do great things.
Yeah.
But I think he can get so much out of small supporting characters. That's where women especially thrive in his films. I think she could play any type of role in any of the films he's made. She contains that coldness that I feel like he would find so exhilarating, and her facial work especially would be something I feel like he could really use extremely well.
And what about you, Scott?
Gosh, there's so many. I find this conversation really invigorating. So I had one in mind, and then during the course of this, I actually have thought of someone else. So I'm going to go with that one as my main one. So I think it's exciting seeing her work with directors, filmmakers who present something perhaps more challenging, and talking also about that sort of ghostly presence. I kind of am interested in tapping into that. So a filmmaker who is incredible at mining amazing performances from the stars he has in his films because of what is written for them, and I assume some really exciting direction, is Jonathan Glazer, who we haven't seen a film from in a long time. And if we were to get something in the ghostly realm, so say we were to have a film focused on a character who has a connection to, like, sort of the spiritual world or the departed world or whatever it might be, and Jennifer Ehle is going to play that character, is perhaps like a medium sort, someone who is connected to that realm. I think that would be a wonderful combination if we think tonally of what we've had from Under the Skin in particular, but also Birth. I reckon that could be a really exciting combo. The one that I had initially in my head is quite different, but also just someone who draws a lot from naturalistic performers, and that's Joanna Hogg. If I think of Unrelated in particular, I would love to see Jennifer Ehle get to play that sort of role in a very naturalistic environment. And I can imagine that being a pairing that would also work very well. So that was mine. What about you, Michael?
Mine, like, I also have changed my mind during this conversation, and I just don't think, I can't think of what, so James Ivory, working with James Ivory, who, you know, he's in his 90s, he focuses on, like, adaptations of books. I can't think of a book really for Jennifer Ehle, but the tone, so James Ivory, you know, Howard's End, A Room with a View, wrote the script, although I'm not sure we saw much of it in Call Me By Your Name recently, but something about, like, how he explores characters who, particularly women, who are without agency or deserve to have more agency, and just how you spend time with them and how they explore the world around them. I just thought she'd fit really well because there's an element of, like, performance in the films that he's worked on, with a real sort of genuine heart underneath, which I think Jennifer Ehle would be terrific at performing. So I don't know. I'm thinking some sort of, let's say, a woman in the 80s just trying to get through the week or something, and something really exciting happens. Maybe she wants to. Maybe actually, let's get James Ivory to adapt The Hours again. And let's have, like, a free kind of form sort of thing. The Hours is a book I really like, a film that I think is grand, but I do think there's a more kind of creative sort of beautiful film that could be made out of that story, which is not to discredit the other one. It's just I think there's something else that could be done. And actually, James Ivory would be a great fit with that. And I'd have Jennifer Ehle playing all the women, seeing as it's her podcast, and I can do that.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say, what would you think of her playing all the roles? Yes, absolutely.
I mean, because I'd want to see her as the Eileen Atkins woman in the flower shop, and I want to see her as Virginia Woolf. Do you know? I'm obsessed. The hours of the film, I'm obsessed with like the minute little performance, like Toni Collette coming in for like a handful of seconds to steal the film from everyone else. I find wild. And yeah, anyway, sorry, that's a lot. And also, not just the female characters. I think Jennifer Ehle could also play the men. So yeah,
perfect.
So that's my wish.
I would love to see her playing against herself in the train scene.
Oh my god! I'm dying in this town, Leonard. And it's like, you are Leonard. It's also because it's like it's all in one person's mind. I think this is actually could be the best film ever made.
Yeah, I'm sold.
And she surely has to get Oscar or some awards attention if she did that. And she could have loads of props like noses, like I don't know what else. Noses, just one nose would be fine. It'd be like Everything Everywhere All at Once, but the Hours version, where we just see all the different ways we can have Jennifer Ehle in it. Anyway, that's the wildest suggestion I've ever had on this podcast, but that's the excitement I have now for Jennifer Ehle. So thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you for joining. Like, it has been such a pleasure. We'll have to have you back another time, Owen, if you'll come, of course. Where can people find you or follow you, or is there anything you want to shout about?
Yeah, so you can find me daily at this stage on Twitter at my name, Eoin Daly. I include the I differentiated from my name, but I post regularly there about film, TV. You can find me on Letterboxd as well. My kind of movie viewing has kind of taken a bit of a slow, stale pace at the moment, as I'm just kind of new things. I'm kind of taking pleasure in rewatching things because for so long I've been seeking to see new and not taking the time to rewatch, and I find it so much pleasurable rewatching things that I love. And now getting to daily recommend them on my Twitter, which is something that I try to work with daily. I'm on day 71 today, and I have another 200 something to go. Yeah, no, that's where you can find me. I've had such a pleasure being here. I also appreciated the very chaotic Hours adaptation, and I cannot wait to see you fund that project.
Surely. I think Meryl and Nicole and Julianne at least will want to give money towards that. And where can people find us, Scott?
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at don'tknowher_pod, or if you fancy dropping us an email, because that is still a thing too, you can do that at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com.
Brilliant. Please do rate, review us. It really helps other people find us, and yet share with other people that you think might be interested. And yes, do pay more attention to those actors who you may not appreciate. That's what I've learned in this episode.
I honestly feel so invigorated and excited to go and visit others that we may have not been, like, we maybe had them on the list for a long time and not been terribly excited to go there. I say we do it, and we might come out the other side being like, wow, why was I not screaming this name?
Or it'd be the first time on an episode we say we don't like this person,
it's fucking
but we
shit,
spend time watching their
watch
film,
any of this
so
person.
we're going to have to do it. But yes, thank you so much, Owen, for opening the door and for joining us again. And yeah,
thanks,
goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.